Dark isn't a word you typically associate with Tom and Jerry, yet here we are. Anyone who grew up watching Tom and Jerry can attest that this all-time cartoon classic has greatly enriched their childhood. It's a simple concept of cat catching mouse, yet writers went above and beyond with their ideas, filling our childhoods with incredible adventures, animations, and memories. However, in the last episode of the show, which has actually been rarely seen on American television, we witnessed Tom getting his heart broken, selling one of his arms and legs, and finally, we find Tom sitting on the train tracks in a state of deep despair, with show writers essentially implying that he met his demise right there and then.
The story of a cat with a broken heart. In a few minutes, it'll all be over.
To add salt to the wound, at the last few seconds of the episode, we can also hear the oncoming train growing louder and louder, ultimately foreshadowing what's about to come. So what's that all about, huh? Well, to be honest, a lot of you probably already knew about this grim ending, and actually, many believe Blue Cat Blues is the final episode, but that's not true. The last episode comes 11 episodes later, though the widespread rumor has fooled a lot of folks. In case you've missed this gem of an episode, let me quickly go over it before we move on to what I consider to be the darkest episode of Tom and Jerry. Just a heads up, if you're keen on this type of content, please show some love by commenting, liking, or subscribing. Your support is what keeps me creating these videos, and I genuinely enjoy the process. Now, Tom and Jerry have always been at each other's throats, but sometimes there's episodes where there's this unspoken bro code between them, and Blue Cat Blues is one of them. At the beginning of the episode, we see Tom and Jerry casually hanging out, sipping on lemonade, when Tom glances over a wall. He lays his eyes upon the most beautiful cat he has ever seen and falls hard for her. Unfortunately for him though, she was all looks and no heart, leading him down a path of self-destruction. At first, he's just happy giving her favors and spending time with her. But for her, it's all just a game. She couldn't care less about Tom. That's when Butch entered the scene, essentially sweeping her off her feet and sending Tom into a downward spiral of desperation. Watching Tom throw everything away for someone who didn't value him is tough. He went all out, trying to compete with Butch, the flashy new tomcat on the block. But no matter what Tom did, Butch always had the upper hand, thanks to his fat wallet. From flowers to perfume and even a diamond ring that needed a welding mask to look at, Tom was outclassed at every turn. In a final effort to win her over, Tom goes to the extreme of practically selling himself out for a car. He signs a slew of contracts, each more alarming than the last, plunging himself into a seemingly bottomless pit of debt. It's almost comical how the terms escalate. From an installment plan to 20 years of slavery. The desperation in these acts are enough to make you pause and think, man, what are you doing? And just when you thought it couldn't get worse, the car gets crushed by Butch's ride. In the end, the girl departs with Butch, leaving Tom with nothing more than a shattered heart and a towering mountain of debt. It's the kind of heartbreak that doesn't just fade after a tub of ice cream and a good cry. Tom hit rock bottom, turning to milk, or something stronger in a less kid-friendly version, to numb the pain. Despite Jerry's attempts to pull him back from the edge. From the eyes of Jerry, it's like watching your buddy make the same bad choices over and over, and no matter what you say, they just can't see the light. Jerry tried though, he really did, but Tom was too lovesick to listen. Cut back to the present, and there's Jerry, reminiscing about the whole saga, only to have his world rocked when he sees his own girl driving off with another mouse. Suddenly, he's in the same boat as Tom, feeling the sting of betrayal. So there they are, two pals with their hearts ripped out, sitting on those tracks, waiting for the inevitable. It's a scene that makes you wonder how a cartoon that's been all about the laughs decided to take such a dark turn. But maybe that's the point. Life's not all about the chase. Sometimes it's about being there for each other when things get real. Offering a shoulder to lean on. Life is difficult, and in order to not stray from our path, we need friends to keep an eye out for us. And that's why Blue Cat Blues stands out from other episodes so much. Rather than having a comedic storyline with even a remotely happy ending, Blue Cat Blues has no intentionally funny moments, instead having a genuinely dark storyline with a tragic ending. I'm not here to ruin a good show for you, so just remember that the conclusion of this Tom and Jerry episode remains open-ended. They've bounced back from far worse, and we don't actually see how things wrap up. As a matter of fact, death as a concept in Tom and Jerry is usually not meant to be taken in a literal sense. Rather, it's a tool for developing a good storyline, and of course, that's pretty obvious because it's a cartoon show after all. But it's a cartoon show that's meant for all audiences, therefore heavy subjects get incorporated into storylines relatively often. So you're finally starting to see Tom and Jerry in a darker light, or at least you're about to be, after I cover some of the darkest moments of Tom and Jerry before moving on to the darkest episode of all time. Here's a classic. In an episode, Two Mouseketeers, Tom gets kind of beheaded at the end of the episode because he failed to catch Jerry and Nibbles. What's disturbing about this, besides Tom meeting his end, is a lack of remorse from Jerry and Nibbles. Just take a look at this scene.
Povo, Shalaguinha.
Nibbles barely reacted, and the next second they're continuing their march with the music ramping its pace back up again. This is pretty dark. But in retrospect, the death of Tom was necessary to create a good storyline. Tom had risk associated with his mission, therefore it was in his best interest to catch the mice. Sadly for him, he failed his mission and paid for the consequences with his life. Here's an episode I watched quite recently and picked up on a few things. In Mouse Trouble, we see Tom gets pierced through his body multiple times and he also gets in half. Do I need to say more? Here, have a look. Do you remember Quacker? Well, here's 2 episodes where he attempts unaliving himself. Now, listen, I know that I'm going overboard with this, and I'm sure for some of you this is a wakening call, because we all have seen these episodes, but as a kid, you never really put any more thought than, haha, cat chasing mouse. And the core of Tom and Jerry is exactly that, cat chasing mouse, but just with a heavier underbelly than one would imagine. I think it's time we can finally move on to the darkest Tom and Jerry episode of all time. Let me know if you agree. Heavenly Puss starts with a classic Tom and Jerry shenanigans, but things take a turn when Tom, after a typical chase gone bad, meets a grand piano's crushing blow with, no joke, kills him. Tom finds himself on a heavenly escalator leading to the pearly gates of Cat Paradise. And this scene, at least for me, has always given me eerie vibes. Never was a fan of this episode, and it did leave a dreary feeling ever since I first watched it as a kid. This heavenly escalator definitely was a contributing factor. So Tom is basically at heaven, and at these gates, Tom's in for a bit of a shock. It's not just a simple in or out situation. There's a gatekeeper and he's got a list. Kinda like Santa, but for cats. Here we see battle-scarred Butch, who lost to a pit bull dog.
Pass granted.
To Frankie, who got struck with a flat iron. To then Aloysius, who got ran over by a steamroller.
Go ahead.
And then of course, there's the 3 kittens who were suffocated and drowned in a bag of water. What some people won't do, as the gatekeeper remarked.
What some people won't do.
It's a moment that makes you pause and think, wow, this got dark fast. It adds a whole new layer to the story, showing that the cartoon isn't just about Tom and Jerry's antics, but it also has these moments that make you reflect. It brings a significant weight to the situation, making you acknowledge that, despite its cartoon nature and lighthearted presentation, the act of abandoning kittens was, and unfortunately still is, a reality for some. Also, the manner in which some of these cats met their demise closely mirrors the real-life ways cats often meet their end. Fighting a dog, getting ran over by a car, being drowned. It really dawns on you more as you grow older and recall this scene. Nonetheless, it's a disturbing atmosphere hearing how each cat met their end, and it's a bit more disturbing rewatching this episode now, because as a kid, you really don't pay notice to any of these things. Going back to the episode, when it's Tom's turn, things don't look good. The gatekeeper isn't impressed with Tom's history of chasing Jerry and isn't ready to let him through. Tom's given one last shot to make things right. Get Jerry to sign a forgiveness certificate. Back on Earth, Tom's pulling out all the stops to get Jerry's signature. He tries the sweet approach with a cake, the desperate move with a fake signature, and even a straightforward plea. But Jerry, he's not having any of it. Despite Tom literally being on the brink of eternal doom, Jerry plays hard to get, leaving Tom in a real bind. If you've never seen this episode, how do you think this would pan out? Jerry signs the certificate and Tom learns a lesson? Well, instead, Tom runs out of time and gets sent to hell, where Spike tortures Tom eternally. Tom is forever stuck there for his crimes, which honestly is kind of bizarre to think about because technically Tom is doing his job as a house cat by warding off any pests. But Tom was always a punching bag for writers, which inherently forced us to root for Jerry when we were kids. The way hell was portrayed also left a memorable image. I always skipped this episode as a kid because of how creepy and dark this scene felt. And that's basically it. Unlike Blue Cat Blues, this episode ended on a softer note because apparently this was all a dream for Tom, and when he wakes up, he runs over to Jerry and kisses him and hugs him profusely. I mean, even for Tom and Jerry, it would be pretty dark leaving the episode with Tom experiencing this nightmare forever. Also, since this was all a dream, we get to appreciate Tom's kindness even more because he's smart enough to realize that he shouldn't take Jerry's companionship for granted, and he needs to appreciate Jerry even more. I hope you enjoyed this thorough analysis of some of the darkest episodes of Tom and Jerry. It was a blast exploring the darker themes of this all-time cartoon classic, and I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did creating it. What are your thoughts? And what other darkest episodes of cartoons would you like me to cover? Leave them in the comments down below. Also, if you're keen on my content, I'm collecting donations in the form of subscriptions to keep me producing more videos. Any help is greatly appreciated.